On today's Monday News podcast, the San Diego Padres, after having a really rough stretch, take 3 out of 4 against the Milwaukee Brewers, even though they did lose that last game yesterday. We're going to be recapping that series, giving my biggest impressions from it, and then also, unfortunately, Fernando Tatis Jr. injury. We're going to talk about that and answer a couple of your questions and comments. As always, big episode on Monday. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, June 24th, 2024. As always, I am your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno. If you want, you can also check out my work over at Just Baseball, a fantastic website where not only do I write about baseball and stuff, and write about the Padres, and write about trade targets, and write about dumb video game stuff, whatever. You can also check out my podcast, Baseball vs. the World, which comes back this week, which is basically evergreen, fun baseball topics. So go check that out if you'd like. Of course, everybody, today's episode, though, I must say, it is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. The first thing we got to talk about, everybody, is this weekend series. And here's the thing. It's so funny how disappointing it was to not get a sweep. Only because it is irrespective of the actual series. It is more just the fact that the Padres are, you guessed it, once again at 500. But I think considering the way that they played these past couple weeks, or the past week, I should say, losing that series against the Angels obviously was the biggest one. But then getting killed by the Mets and then getting killed by the Phillies, that was really bad. So it's good that they bounced back and are at least back at the equal point, right? So that's where we're at. And look, I think that they played pretty well. I mean, I fundamentally, if we had to do a too long didn't read version of this podcast, I say what I said before, which is that I'm not very keen on investing big into this team, into this group, i.e. at the trade deadline. I don't want to give up too many prospects to get Garrett Crochet or Jazz Chisholm or whoever else is on the market, right? The Mason Miller, right? Who Jackson Merrill hit a walk-off home run on, of course, a couple weeks ago. I think that that's my thing. But I also do not think that this is a team that we should give up on. This is not a team that should be rebuilding. And I don't think that they could, even if they wanted to. But I don't think anyone's thinking that. But for the record, no. So you shouldn't be rebuilding. But also, I just wouldn't be super crazy going for stuff at the trade deadline. But we're going to see, because Preller is Preller. But let me tell you, if you only watch this weekend series, you'd be like, yes, they should absolutely invest. Unfortunately, though, let's talk about yesterday's game first. We'll get the bad news out of the way first. The Padres lose the last game of this series 6-2, even though they had a nice little matchup going into it. For the Brewers, it was, what's-his-face? Tobias Myers, who I frankly had never heard of before. He actually hadn't been that bad, but I thought he hadn't faced any competition in a little bit, facing teams like Detroit and Toronto and the Angels and the White Sox over his last few starts. And the Padres, given how good of an offense they've had this year, and basically every metric, especially in high-leverage situations, I thought there was a good matchup, especially with Michael King being on the bump. Unfortunately, he gets hit a little bit, but it actually wasn't that bad. His final line is 6 innings, 5 earned runs on 9 hits. He walked 1, struck out 8. The 8 strikeouts was impressive. I thought Michael King, here's how I would describe it. Michael King has been good for a while now. Over his last, ever since his start against the Reds, he hasn't given up more than 3 earned runs in any of his starts until yesterday. He'd been very solid. He obviously had that really big strikeout game against the A's. He was pretty okay against Philly, all things considered, how good of a team Philly is. And he's just been a solid starter. And while he hasn't always been racking up the swings and misses and the big strikeout numbers that he had when he was a little bit more of a reliever role with the Yankees, and even at the beginning of this season, he's been limiting hard contact. Remember, once upon a time, both him and Joe Musgrove were the leaders in giving up home runs in baseball. And this game, he actually wasn't that bad. Now, don't get me wrong, the 9 hits and 5 earned runs looks unsightly, but it basically all happens in the second inning. And it wasn't really an inning. Again, if you're going to have a bad start, this is the type of bad start that actually makes me This sounds weird, but it makes me more confident in Michael King going forward because the top of the second inning is basically where most of the damage happens in this game against Michael King. They score 5 earned runs in the top of the second inning, and it starts off, there's not a lot of hard hit stuff. It starts off with a single by the Brewers to start off the inning with an expected batting average of 80. 80, folks. So they got a little bit lucky there. Then the singles after that, exit velocity of 64.6 and exit velocity of 66.5 miles per hour. He does give up a triple. Don't get me wrong, that was the one bad hit. But then after that, he gives up a single to Tyler Black that had an expected batting average of 280. That inning just seemed to devolve, and I just don't think it was all that bad, right? I really don't. I think that if you, again, considering how solid he's been lately, look what it took. It took a little bit of luck. They were not hitting the ball all that hard. It was a lot of singles, and singles for a guy who we were used to giving up a lot of home runs at the beginning of the season. I just think that shows you this was just, he was due, but it wasn't like he got hammered and we're like, oh God, the bad version of Michael King showed up. No, I still think he was pretty good today. He still got some swings and misses. Changeup looked pretty solid. Fastball looked pretty solid. Maybe got a little bit of a call, get the Gary Sanchez at bat. But overall, like I said, barely any hard hits. There was like 1 or 2. The triple was the big one. And then the single to start things off with an expected batting average of 80. So it was a little bit of not a totally fluky hitting, but it just shows you Michael King really has been on. So shouts to him. I really think that he's been okay. All things considered. But that's basically all to report for the rest of the game. The Padres unable to really get deep into this Brewers bullpen or their starting pitching. Luis Arraez goes 2 for 4 with an RBI in this one. Jurickson Profar 1 for 4 with a double. By the way, if anyone's wondering, Jurickson Profar's still been amazing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if anyone's like, yeah, he hasn't hit like crazy amounts of home runs in a while. He hasn't hit a home run since before, was it even before June? When was the last home run that Jurickson Profar hit? Let me see real quick. It was June 9th against Arizona. But even still, he has 3 doubles in his last 3 games. He still has a good walk rate. He's still putting together good at-bats. He's still been great, Jurickson Profar. So don't worry about him, I'd say. Although eventually I do think the numbers will decline a little bit. Jay Cronenworth 1 for 4. Machado 1 for 3 in this game. He also gets an RBI as well, the only other one for the game. Jackson Merrill continues his hot streak, 1 for 4, but he gets a double. He gets a double in this one. Bad games for Solano and Peralta. 0 for 4, 0 for 8 combined, both of them. 3 strikeouts from Solano, which feels rare. He's been a little bit shaky lately, just a little bit. He hasn't been as hot as he was to start. For me, my biggest issue is that he just doesn't seem to be putting together as many long at-bats as he was before. But even still, bottom line is both him and your Peraltas and your Luis Arraez and your Tyler Wades even, they've just been such solid bench players that are so much better than anything the Padres had to work with last year. That's still hard for me to get annoyed in any way. I mean, what the Padres have gotten from role players, from Profar to all these guys, it's just unbelievable. It's the stuff of legend. So that's the really good sign out of this. But overall, Tom Cosgrove comes up in this one. He gives up an earned run. He had just gotten called up. And they optioned Adam Mazur, by the way, back to AAA, which is something that I think they should have done. I think that he clearly just wasn't. He was just getting a little bit overmatched, I think. Not finding the strike zone consistently. And Tom Cosgrove comes up, and how does he play? Immediately gives up an earned run. That is really annoying. He was good, for the record, 2 days ago against the Brewers. 2 strikeouts and 1 1/3. I don't know if he can return to what he was last year. I think that his expected field independent pitching stat was clearly a red flag. It was way too high. It was like a 4.9 last year. So maybe this was just some obvious regression. Maybe he's not as good as we thought. But I would still rather give him a shot than Stephen Kolek, right? Who still is just kind of on this team. So we'll see how that pans out. But overall, not a great game for the Padres, but they still won 3 out of 4. That's the important thing to note here. And there's still been some good developments, although we do have to talk about Tatis getting injured. Really, really rough. And we haven't had an update just yet. Not just yet. At the time of this recording, we haven't had an update. We're going to give my thoughts on that as well as the rest of the series in just 1 second, guys. But first, I want to take a second to talk to you about the good old fine folks over at FanDuel, folks. Here's the thing. FanDuel is rocking. It's locking. Look, just because, folks, the NBA Finals are over, it does not mean that FanDuel is gone. No. You've got WNBA. You've got NBA. You've got, or not NBA, MLB. You've got NFL futures starting to come in. Maybe you got some, I don't know, maybe there's some Chargers fans. Maybe there's some 49ers fan. Maybe there's some, who's the other team in California? Raiders? This is the Raiders? No, they're in Vegas. Whatever. Whoever you want to bet against the Chargers and all those teams, you can do that. You can check out all the different odds. And frankly, this NFL season feels wildly open. So definitely check that out, guys. I love sports. I never want them to stop, folks. At FanDuel, they do not. They keep the sports going whenever I want. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. It might get into the dog days of summer. We might be watching the Padres play the Cardinals on like a Saturday night, and you're like, oh, this isn't all that exciting. Whatever. Don't worry. FanDuel has you covered. There's something for everyone all day, every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. But that's not all, folks. Let's also talk about our good old daily fantasy homies over at Prize Picks, folks. And here's the thing. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, it's just you against the numbers. So don't worry about all that craziness, man. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And what I love about them the most, though, is that they offer injury insurance. So, for example, if you had Tatis a couple days ago, when he got hit and he only was there for one at bat, that would not count as a loss for you because he exited the game early. So don't worry about that. And with the finals over, you want to get into some hoops action. It doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is still heating up with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson. You can win up to 100 times your cash watching them absolutely ball out. Great game yesterday between Fever and the Sky, by the way. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Folks, it's great. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here at Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing here on this lovely Monday morning. Let's talk about the rest of the series really quickly. Saturday's game, 6-4 win by the Padres. We love it. We love it. First of all, Randy Vasquez probably having his best start of his whole dang on career, man. 5 innings, no earned runs, 3 walks, 3 Ks. Nice bounce back for him considering that he got absolutely lambasted by the Phillies, giving up 6 earned runs on 12 hits. His last start, I think Randy is in a similar boat, low-key, to an Adam Mazur. The difference is that he doesn't have the same walk problems, which is why Mazur got optioned. I don't have a good grip on what Randy needs exactly because I think the stuff can still be good. I think him and Brito are kind of the same guy in a lot of ways for what they've delivered for this Padres team so far. I still believe that they're young and that they have some potential at least to be maybe some solid back-end starters. But at this point, I will say, regardless of that, this is the type of start you need because the Padres have had 2 guys on the IL, right? They've had Musgrove and they've had Darvish. So having those 2 guys on the IL, I kind of don't necessarily even need to read into his start and what it says about his future when really this is some spot start type of situation that we're going in here. So again, not great of a tenure for him, 5.10 ERA on the season, but it did not matter because the Padres were able to score enough, getting to Mr. Carlos Rodriguez very early, 4 innings, 4 earned runs on 6 hits from him. They also got to Jacob Junis, old Giants enemy. Jacob Junis, were able to hit him up for 2 runs as well. Look, not too much to report here other than the fact that we have our boy, our absolute king, Jackson Merrill, 3 for 3 in this game, 3 RBIs, a home run, and a walk. Jackson Merrill, one of the things we talked about is the rookie wall. We've talked about this a lot. But his isolated power numbers have stretched so much as of late that it's actually like inspiring, frankly, because I thought that what we had seen from Merrill so far, I thought that was kind of going to be what we got for the rest of the year, which is a plus defender, maybe a 108, 110 WRC plus guy, so an above average bat, someone who at the very minimum is just better than Trent Grisham. Instead, he's been infinitely better on the season, hitting 289 with a 326 on base, 445 slugging, 122 WRC plus. The on-base percentage isn't great. Don't get me wrong. Not great. What I do like is he is making up for it with his defense and whatnot. The thing he's unable to do right now is walk. He has not been getting a good walk rate, 5% walk rate on the season, because he chases a lot of pitches. It's still impressive and, in my opinion, more indicative of him just being young. The fact that he's chasing pitches, like he's just not used to Major League pitching fully yet. But what I like is he's always making contact. Like, he just always makes contact, this guy. That's why he has the high batting average. So while he needs to develop more of a better plate discipline, swing at less pitches outside the zone, I think he's in like the bottom 10th percentile in chase rate in the league. The fact that he makes good contact, solid contact, even if he's just fouling off tips, is great. But what I didn't see coming was the power surge, folks. This guy has been on an absolute heater as of late. Seriously. Like, I don't know how he's been doing it, but it's really rad, let me tell you. But in terms of his isolated power number, that's the thing that I recommend everyone go check out. He's been awesome in that regard. When it comes to his isolated power numbers, if you go by game over his career, there has been a ginormous stretch as of late, which has equated to a better weighted on base, right? So ever since his 60th game, it has gone nothing but up. Ever since then, the line is straight up. I don't have a picture of it right now because I forgot to screenshot it before recording, but that's the big thing here. So it's not just him lucking into power. A couple of them, it was like, okay, maybe this was just a little bit of Petco down that right field line, maybe. But for the most part, I like that he's launching the ball more. It just seems like he's getting to balls better. And he's tapping into power. He's got 10 home runs on the season. He's been fantastic. He's been so fantastic that, in fact, right now, among all qualified outfielders, the San Diego Padres have 3 of the top 5 best players according to wins above replacement on Fangraphs. Jurickson Profar is first in all of Major League Baseball, in the National League with a 2.7 F4, then Fernando Tatis Jr. with a 2.5 F4, then Brandon Nimmo, he's got a 2.2, and then Jackson Merrill also has a 2.2. One major difference between those two, it's kind of give or take. So one thing is Brandon Nimmo is walking more, and he has a better on-base percentage. He's always been a big on-base percentage guy. But what I think is really closing the gap between the two is the fact that Merrill's hitting for power now. He's got 10 on the year, while Brandon Nimmo has 11. And also what I really like is that Jackson Merrill's been much better defensively. So I'm not going to be that person that's going to get mad if Brandon Nimmo makes the All-Star game instead of him. But I'm just saying, this year, so far, -2 defensive run saves, 0 outs above average, not the best overall numbers there. Meanwhile, Jackson Merrill, defensively, has been quite good. 3 defensive runs saved and 3 outs above average. So he's been a better defender. So while Brandon Nimmo has been slightly better offensively, well, I'd say overall he's been slightly better. But lately, Merrill's closing that gap, man. So here's what I'm trying to say. Is it possible that all 3 of them are starting in the All-Star game? I think unlikely. I think they're going to probably have Nimmo in there. I think he's going to win the vote, frankly. But I think Profar is in left field. I think Tatis is in right field, assuming that he's all healthy. And man, the fact that Merrill might even make the All-Star game, does part of that have to do with the fact that we've had an onslaught of injuries and a lot of guys not playing up to snuff in the National League, especially the outfield? Yes, but who cares? This guy's been awesome, and I cannot be more excited about him. And it didn't stop there, by the way. In Friday's game, Jackson Merrill also had a good one, 2 for 5 with a double in that one. Although it wasn't his game, it was Jake Cronenworth's game. 5 for 5 with 2 doubles. I'm sorry, not 5 for 5 with 2 doubles. 5 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a double and a home run. My guy has been scorching hot as of late. It's just, it cannot be understated how good he's been for this team. Yes, he hasn't been drawing as many walks lately. That's been bad thing about him. And yes, I think that his wins above replacement, which we just talked about, would be a lot higher if he was able to provide value in the infield, because that usually weighs better. For those who don't know, first base defense is not. It's being a good first base defender. It's the position that seems to matter the least out of all the defensive positions, because you're not necessarily, the range isn't as big of a deal, right? So that's just me. I would have preferred if he was there, but regardless, in his position, the guy's been really, really good, and I just could not be happier with Jake Cronenworth this season. The power of getting engaged, folks, that's all you need to do. Get engaged, and all of a sudden you'll be amazing at your given field. It's just that easy. It's just that easy, right? Anyway, but yeah, in this game, Cronenworth, obviously the big star. Manny Machado, 4 for 5 in this game with a double. Donovan Solano, he gets a hit in this game as well with 2 RBIs. I was just critiquing him before. Again, slightly down for him lately. He's not like this 290 hitter with a 480 on base or whatever the heck he had. But even still, Arise gets a home run in this game. I forgot to mention that. Down the right field line. That was nuts. That was hilarious. I totally forgot about that. When you're getting home runs like that, that's when you just know things are going your way, man. Shouts to Luis Arise. He goes 1 for 5 in the game, but it is with that home run. Again, I just can't emphasize enough how much of a great addition he's been for this team. Don't get me wrong, he's not the biggest star, but even still, and by the way, it wasn't a fluky home run either. 810 expected bat average, 26 out of 30 ballparks. It wasn't some fluky wow home run. Like, shouts to Arise, that kind of got the offense going. He's just a spark plug, and I genuinely feel like he's one of those guys where wins above replacement doesn't always do him kind, and it doesn't tell the full story. That's just me, but I digress. Then, folks, we unfortunately had... Just kidding. They won the Thursday game. I forgot for a second. That was the walk-off game, for those who don't remember. That was incredible. 6-6 win for the Padres. A walk-off by Cronenworth. One thing I do want to mention is that... Jeremiah Estrada, I might have already talked about this actually, now I think about it. I forgot if by Friday episode I talked about it, so I'm going to be kind of brief by just saying that 2 earned runs that he gave up on a walk in 3 Ks, it wasn't very fluky. I'm worried about Estrada just a little bit. This has been a ginormous regression. I think, yeah, I did talk about him, I'm sorry. 8 innings in like his last 4 1/3 innings. Not good. Not good. Hopefully he bounces back because he's such a good story and so easy to root for, but, you know, not great from them. But bottom line is the Padres have been good this year. Look, when you just compare this team to last year, they are so much better. It is actually night and day. And I know that the record doesn't show that. But when it comes to the schedule, when it comes to the results, hitting in high leverage, having guys who just are playing okay, right? I mean, at least in extra innings this year. In 1-run games, they're still 9-12. That's not great. But last year they were like 11-24 or something crazy. And then in extra innings games, at least right now, they are 2-0. So that's very good. That's already, I think they've already matched their win total in extra inning games. They still have to be better, and they've still had some really bad losses. Like I mentioned, 1-run games, 9-12 on the season. They need to be better there. But don't give up, because they've had a lot of cool blowout wins. They've had a lot of cool comebacks this year. Don't give up. Don't give up. But if I told you that I was confident, like super confident about how they play this next series, I'd be lying to you. We're going to talk about that and more and answer some of your questions in just a second, guys. But first, I want to give a shout out to the legendary, the phenomenal, then sensational new sponsor that we've had as of late, and that is the good friends over at Supply House, folks. And here's the thing with Supply House. They are here for you, folks, because you can get the supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades. That's what Supply House is for. So what does that mean? That means HVAC, plumbing, electrical products. You can get them online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. And this is especially helpful for dumbos like me who aren't very good at the skilled, trades and whatnot. So this website helps you out big time. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. And they've got great support as well. So if you are a dumbo like me, don't worry. They have industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and you get to talk to a real person. No robocall, AI, machine nonsense, Skynet, whatever. They help you out directly, and they're going to give you whatever it is that you need immediately. It's really great. It's really great. We love it, folks. We love it. We love it. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies, whatever you need from anywhere with a few quick clicks at supplyhouse.com. Go check it out. And just like that, folks, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and indeed vibing. Some little things I want to mention really quickly before we get into this. Tatis, injured, freak sort of injury, gets hit by a pitch, and I believe it was, the Thursday game? Friday's game. Was it Friday's game? What the heck was it? It was Friday, right? I crazy? Hold on. Give me 1 second, folks. Yeah, it was Friday. Okay. We haven't gotten an update yet. I am hoping. It sounded like Mike Schilt had a little bit of like a depressed vibe when talking about it. Now, Mike Schilt has been a little bit weird to read. He's like, it's not that he's like a sphinx or anything. I don't know about you guys, but I can't like get the vibe on like who he is sometimes. Like, I mean, I one thing I do like is that he defends his guys. I've always liked that. I like that at times this year, there have been some bullpen blowups, and he's like, well, what do you want? This guy has been great lately. This team hits he's just. I think he's done a lot of good defending his players, and maybe even taking some hits sometimes. I do think that he's had a couple bad moments, though. I know some people have brought up like keeping players in when maybe they should just be taken out after getting hurt or something like that, not having them come back in. Some of the defensive replacements, sometimes taking out Profar at the wrong time. I really don't like blaming him for what's it called? I don't like blaming him as much for the bullpen because I just don't think it's his fault that Jeremiah Strata, who was like the story of baseball for basically from April to May and all that all of a sudden he gets absolutely torpedoed. I just don't think that that's like his fault. You know what I mean? He's a good pitcher, right? So I don't really blame him. When I saw someone leave me a comment that's like, yeah, well, Suarez has been shaky lately. And I'm like, oh, come on. And you know what I mean? Like Suarez is a 1.21 ERA. Who do you want him to go to? You know, Luis Garcia from last year. So that's my vibe. I think he gets a little bit too much flack for that sometimes. Although the other day when they went from Wandy to Yuki, that was weird. Bringing in two straight, that was weird. The lefty thing. It's like, what do you? I don't quite get what you're doing there, man. I don't get the plan there. But anyway, back to Tatis. Hopefully it's not a long stint. And if it is, hopefully it's just like a 15-day IL. Maybe he'll come back within the week. We have still not gotten an update on it, and he still hasn't played. I did hear someone say, I could be wrong about this, that he was available to pinch hit. So if that's true, then that's great. We'll have to see, though. If he is hurt, that is bad. But I will say one thing for the Padres is on top of your Arise, on top of your Jackson Merrill, who's been heating up and tapping into power, on top of Jake Cronenworth being so much better this year, and I think it's totally legit too, Manny Machado has been low-key heating up. Last 30 games, he's slashing .315 with a .364 on base, a .441 on base, .441 slugging, 126 WRC plus. Combine that with his great defense. That's kind of like the baseline of what you expect usually from Manny Machado. Really solid offensive player to at times great and then amazing defensively. At minimum like a 4-win player like every year. That's what kind of you're expecting. But hasn't been as great. But I will say it's not been super luck-based. One thing that I have noticed is he's been making a lot more contact outside the zone recently, and it's not like he's been swinging infinitely more outside the zone. So I think that's just showing that he's just been able to get to more pitches better. He's not being overly aggressive either, and he's just hitting into good stuff. He hit a home run recently. That's really great. I'm still worried about Manny Machado overall. I still don't like that his slugging numbers are still really bad by his standards. Still on the year. Slugging .381, which is significantly down from what it usually was. But my hope is he's been really great lately. I'll take it. I'll take whatever we can get. And maybe it's a sign that that injury really has been something that he's been trying to work through, and it's taken a lot longer than we thought. Maybe Manny Machado, low-key, shouldn't have actually been playing at all. That is what could be a possibility. And maybe Solano should be playing more, given the injury. But I know that Solano came up late, but you guys get my point. Let's now look into some of the questions, though, that y'all folks had for me. And it's not a lot. You guys have been slacking lately, man, with some of the questions. Let me tell you. First of all, this comment comes from @JohnnyCage1057 saying Merrill will be traded. No, he will not. I would be so shocked. And here's the thing. If the Padres had center field help, that wouldn't shock me if he was like, yeah, I'm getting some superstar. I'm trading for Luis Robert and Garrett Crochet. Frankly, that's the only thing that makes sense, is if you would give up Merrill in order to get Luis Robert as a replacement and then also give a bunch of prospects to get Garrett Crochet. It's the only way they trade Merrill that would like make any sort of sense. Seriously. No, they're not trading him. Frankly, given the Padres like tendencies, they're probably working on trying to extend him, which by the way, I'm not in favor of either. But no, he's not getting traded. Johnny Cage. Go back to Mortal Kombat, you chump. I'm kidding, of course. Thank you for listening. @24 Tommy Street says Padres have what I have called MLP, or what I have called high MLP, magical loser power. High MLP helps you find ways to lose no matter what players and other advantages you have. Not sure where it come from. Siler ate a haunted burrito once. Contagious nervous breakdowns. Nobody knows, but MLP is real, I say. It could be. It very much could be. Again, they still haven't been awesome this year. I think what stinks is I mentioned the one-run games. They are so good at winning a bunch of one-run games and then losing them right after. It's just so weird, this team. I will say, though, they're still 500 at least. A lot of other National League teams could not say the same. And speaking of which, we also have a question relating to that. In terms of, what's it called? Them being just super inconsistent when it comes to their win-loss record. At Kaz asked me, or I'm sorry, let me get to my boy Rama Murdy real quick. Don't worry, Kaz, I've got you. Rama Murdy, longtime listener of the show, says, if it's not too late, question I have for you. If the season ended today, how deep of a playoff run do you see the Padres making? Here's the thing about this Padres team. If they make the playoffs, I actually really think that they could make a run. I really do. I really do. They've shown time and time before when they make the playoffs. When they've actually made the playoffs, they've done well. Last time they made the NLCS and they beat two 100-win teams in order to get to the Phillies, and that just didn't go well. Josh Hader wasn't used. We could blame that. That's a good example of blaming a manager for bullpen usage, by the way. That series just didn't go their way. Clevenger and Manaea were just so frustrating how bad they were. Like, they couldn't even get through an inning. That's also team building. But in my opinion, considering the team wasn't even built that well, and they had these two guys that were just allergic to just getting one inning, that's all they needed from those two fools. I think that they made a great run there. And the last time they made a run was in 2020 when they beat the Cardinals and they were super jazzed. You get Tatis with his bat flip that ends up on MLB The Show as the cover. Also, keep in mind, yes, they lose that series to the Dodgers next, but they literally had their top two starters get hurt. So the Dodgers fans love talking smack, but remember that. Use that every time. Their top two starters were hurt. Top two. One of them was like Cy Young 5 that year, by the way, and Dinelson Lamet. You guys ever just think about Dinelson Lamet that year? God, he was special, man. He was special. But yeah, that's my thing. When the Padres have made the playoffs, they do have that extra gear. And I do think, whether you can measure it or not, having that home field in San Diego, the fans are going to lose their minds. I think that that's a plus. I really do. And I think that they get amped. I think that guys like Jake love big moments like that. He gets super frustrated when he doesn't come through. You saw him when he had the big double against the Dodgers. They get amped, right? And then Tatis is just the master of it all, right? So I absolutely think that they could make a big run if they made it. The question is if they can make it. That's the bigger thing. Moving on now to @Kaz on Twitter, another recent frequenter and question asker of the podcast. Do you think Tatis being out makes teams fearless against us because he was just getting hot and hopefully he wears an elbow guard? Love the pod. Still Friar Faithful. Go Padres. And then 4 baseball emojis. Appreciate the enthusiasm, sir. I think that it does affect the lineup a lot because then you start and you say, okay, we've got Luis Arias to start. And if we have a lefty, then great. That could be a bad matchup for them. And then you kind of have like your Jake Cronenworths. And then you have Manny Machado. I don't think that it makes teams fearless. But it's like every other team. They probably look at it like, yeah, this is significantly easier. Having Donovan Solano as the number 2 hitter instead of like a number 5 or 6 greatly changes the team. But I will say, with how Manny Machado and Jackson Merrill have been playing lately, they've picked up for it. So teams are still fearful and whatnot. But yes, I do think that without Tatis, you don't have to throw nearly as many weird pitches. I just think that they can attack batters better. In my opinion. And we don't have enough time to get into the specifics of that, but I do. Yeah. I don't think it makes them fearless, though, because there's still a lot of good players on this team. And frankly, professional athletes, I think that they are not... It's not that they're fearless because they don't think you're good. It's that they think they will win because they are just... That's how they got here. They're super confident. But I don't think it's like a disrespectful thing. I think that they treat everything seriously. This is their job. You know what I mean? I remember one time they said, like on a podcast there, or on what was that, an ESPN, pardon the interruption, they're like, yeah, I think a bunch of these players like underestimate Cooper Kupp in the NFL. We don't have to get why people made that comment, but I was like, nah, bro, these people are professionals. They know how good Cooper Kupp is, regardless of what he is, right? Like, I'm like, that's crazy. That was a couple of years ago. But anyway, I think all these guys don't underestimate, but they think that they're great. Anyway, not to get into sports psychology. @Dane G Jr. from 6 days ago says, we're about to go 0 for 6 strap in. The way they have been playing lately is shown. They are only positioned where they are in the wild card spot out of luck. Lucky that the NL is horrible. I do agree with the last part of that statement, that we are very lucky that the National League has been bad this year. And the fact that the Brewers are one of the only teams above 500, but I just clearly don't think have any aspirations to go far. They traded their best player this past offseason. I think that they might sell at the deadline too. That's going to be an interesting team to follow. But also, Cardinals, 39-37 this year. They're kicking up lately. I don't know. But I will say, out of all these teams, plus 14 run differential, it's much better than the Cardinals who have minus 31. So, come on, Padres. Stop playing poorly. I think that overall, it doesn't surprise me when they win series like this. So, when everyone was like, oh my God, we're going to lose to the Brewers. Honestly, I'm not surprised at all that they won 3 out of 4. What scares me is after this, even though they've got a great matchup tonight, Matt Waldron, Knuckleball King versus the Nationals. Not a great lineup. Not a great team overall. They're not bad. They're definitely not bad. Shout out old homie CJ Abrams, who I got to see a couple weeks ago. Almost hit a triple, by the way. He got thrown out. And they're facing Patrick Corbin, probably pound for pound overall the worst starter in baseball these last 4 years. And they usually lose games like this. So that's what I'm worried about. But in terms of going 0 for 8, no, they always bounce back. That's what's so annoying and why you can't quit them. They have a series win against the Dodgers right after they get beat by some bad team, but then they get swept by the Rockies. So that's the problem. But anyway, you were wrong, Mr. Dage. Just them proving you wrong a little bit. At Brandon Perry, 8437, last question says, are the Padres going to be able to re-sign guys like Waldron and King with their recent performances, raising their price? If they wanted to extend them, they could. I don't think their recent performances have been so unbelievable that they would be out of their price range. I think, in terms of out of their price range, I think is Garrett Crochet, because he's been just doing so well lately that I'm wondering if the Padres will even be able to trade for him, given that it's a light market, it seems like, too. Also, a hot take, I don't want to extend them. Michael King is still under control for next year, and Matt Waldron is still in pre-arbitration. So I just don't think, and I feel like we get this a lot from Padres fans, maybe because they're just shocked that they have good players for once, considering their whole franchise history. They haven't had as many. Enough. There's too many guys that are signed to deals. There's too much money going out on this team. I don't want to, the roster. It's like you're penalizing yourself. Matt Waldron's arbitration is probably going to go up after this year. Michael King, if he has another bounce back start and all that stuff, his arbitration will go up next year. And then if he leaves in free agency, guess what? In theory, they have your Dylan Leskos and Robbie Snellings. Hopefully those guys will be good. I just don't like kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball when you don't need to yet, just because what you've seen recently is great. What if all of a sudden, a month from now, Major League hitters figure out Matt Waldron's knuckleball? I don't think that's going to happen, because more so I think his secondary pitches have been better. But I'm just saying, let's not take everything at face value and immediately extend everybody under the sun just because they're good. Enough. Stop doing that. Guys get better. No one thought Matt Waldron was going to be good. I got a bunch of people sending me hate messages. Well, sorry, not hate messages, but some slander for believing in Matt Waldron. Look at him now. It could just go the other way too. Yu Darvish, all of a sudden everyone's like, we love that contract. And look what happened. He's fallen off and he's gotten hurt again. So just enough. There's enough people extended. Let's wait a little bit. Let's see what we even have in the first place before extending guys. But, ladies and gentlemen, with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Look forward to tomorrow's episode where we recap this game that hopefully Patrick Corbin did not randomly have a good start, because please, dear God, hopefully we'll have an update on Tatis by tomorrow's episode as well. We'll have to see. But until that next time, folks, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.